You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Good evening, everybody. Here we are on Monday evening after our yet another sunny day at StoneX, which is always welcome. And we got Barry here. Barry, did you enjoy your free beer?
No.
It was free, for goodness sake. What was wrong with it?
It was free, it was poured, it wasn't drunk. Let me put it that way. And neither was I, before anyone questions the...
I enjoyed mine. I quite like Levelhead, I've got to say. I know it's not everybody's taste. I enjoy it. We've got Matt. Matt, have you actually seen the game?
I've seen bits of it. I think, I'm here as window dressing today, which is some would say I'm not even very good for that. So we'll see.
It says a lot about me and Barry then.
it does bring the average age down by about 30 years, though. So
yeah, it does. Because you were at a party, weren't you?
Yeah, it was my uncle's 60th, which, you can't really miss those as much as I do have my season ticket. But
that's right. And did it descend into chaos as it should?
Not as much as it could have done. My uncle was 60 and a lot of the other people that were there were older than that. So it was...
Well, they're often the worst, let me tell you. We've got a very, very good crop of three-word reviews, which I think many of them sum up the game and indeed sum up the season. And Barry's very kindly sorted them into the good, the not so good, and shall we say the rest. So starting off with the good, we've got Melanie Antao. Enjoyed spectating yesterday. It was a sunny day. I was sitting there in my sunny seat in quite a full house. And as an afternoon, it wasn't too bad. It was a shame that it wasn't a better match. What do you think, Barry?
10 tries, you can't really complain. It wasn't a top quality match, but there was certainly plenty to enjoy and plenty to talk about. And it was a beautiful day, and it was nice to be burnt to death as opposed to being drowned to death in my slightly cheaper seat in the East Stand.
Or blown off to somewhere north of Mill Hill, which we've had a few times this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil Harrison, better than Exeter's. And I think, whatever you could say about this season, it has been a source of constant solace to look at how Exeter are doing, which has been really bloody awful.
Yeah, we could possibly add Harlequins into that as well.
Absolutely.
London's club with the world's best 10, according to some of their fans. And although they did the double over us, so they'll probably be quite happy with that, they finished below us again.
Again, I know. I think you brought that up last week, didn't you, Matt, that it was important to win to make sure that we came in ahead of Harlequins.
I think so, yeah. Saying that the weekend's been better than Exeter, every weekend we've had has been better than Exeter's, apart from the 2 weekends where they've beaten us.
God, it's so often been the other way around. I remember that. Was it an Alex? No, it's an Alex Lazowski penalty right from the halfway line on the edge, wasn't it? That went sailing through the post, and old Toady had a really thunderous look on his face.
I think actually that was Alex Goode down at their place.
Yeah. No, Alex Goode, yeah.
Yes, because I don't think he didn't start that game, if I remember correctly. He came on as a sub and ended up with the last, as you say, the last kick of the game, and knocked it straight over, and everyone picked him up. And Toady had come down from his seat in the stands ready to celebrate with Rob Baxter on the touchline, and ended up slinking away with looking like a bulldog chewing a wasp.
And that's been life as an Exeter supporter ever since.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sam Norris. Who is Sam Norris?
Don't know. Not a clue.
I think I vaguely remember him.
Alex Goode Goat. Well, you can't argue with that. He doesn't often talk sense, Sam, but he does there. Alistair Wood, a similar theme, Alex Goode legend. It was a fantastic point in the match, wasn't it, Barry? When we just scored and Fergus Burke someone was going to kick off, but they stopped the match to allow everybody to give Alex Goode the send-off that he deserved.
I'm not saying that was pre-planned, but Carl Dixon was even applauding him before it was actually officially announced. I have no comment as to whether Carl had decided to do that himself or Matt Carley had told him. You can make your own minds up on that one.
Did they have that on the highlights, Matt?
I didn't actually have it on the sort of 6-minute highlights package. It was literally just the tries. But there's obviously all over social media, there's various angles of Goode walking off the pitch. And I think, although I have only seen highlights of the match, I have actually watched 80 minutes because I think I've watched Goody's final moments maybe 20 times.
Yeah, it was a fantastic moment. Everybody stood up. I mean, there was a good number of Bath supporters giving him a clap off as well. So it was a great moment. Josh, trust the process. What do you reckon to that, Matt? Trust the process.
The process is a little bit longer than we wanted it to be. There's a lot of talk about this season. I mean, we'll probably end up discussing it next week. But in terms of league points, we've finished with the same amount as we did last season. So although a lot of people do feel like we've gone backwards in what we keep calling a transitional year, we haven't. We've kind of just stood still. I think I'm sitting on the fence as I normally do. I don't think it's been a successful season. Obviously, we've finished 6th. I don't think it's been an absolute disaster, but I do feel like we need to start next season very, very well, or some of the goodwill that's left will very quickly disappear. I trust in Mark McCall, certainly, and there are big changes being made. We'll see plenty of those over the summer still to come. Yeah, we'll just have to see if we can adapt and move with the times.
There was a statement from Mark McCall after the game where he was emphasising, shall we say, very heavily the fact that the average age of the squad is 24, that there's a record academy intake, and 13 academy graduates made their debut during the season.
Yeah.
Which is all fair points, Barry, isn't it?
They're fair points, but there is a difference between the average age of the squad and the average age of the players picked. Charlie Bracken brings the average age of that squad down, but until Saturday just gone, he's only been getting 4, 5, 6 minutes at the end when the game's kind of decided one way or another. So it's a little bit cheeky, should we say, of Smalley to put it that way, because the average age of the squad and the average age of the starting 15 are two different things this season, I think.
On paper, it looked an incredibly strong team and a very, very strong bench as well. But in the games that had led up to it, although it might have only been for about 50 or 60 minutes at Northampton, I thought there was progress ever since the Six Nations break, because before then, our attacking play in particular was pretty awful. We seem to be making progress there, but on Saturday again, we were seeing that stuttering attack. There was a few good moves and then a mistake, or a few good moves and someone would be cornered out on the wing. We showed once again, bloody nearly, our huge ability to almost snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, once again, we just fell off, didn't we? And allowed, let's face it, the Bath Academy team, or at least the reserve team, to almost snatch that at the end. And the overall impression from that game, as there had been from other games throughout the season, was that the team, for me anyway, is very much less than the sum of its parts, because we've got some great players who are capable of playing very, very well, but we're not showing it.
We're not showing it, and we're not showing it consistently enough either. I mean, there were some absolutely brilliant wraparound moves in midfield again on Saturday, which we've seen before. One of them led to Rotimi Shegan's try in the first half, but then we do it again and someone would pop the pass off and it'd be dropped. Our handling errors are not good at the moment, and that's causing us a problem. I'm just looking for the stat now. We got into their 22 an outrageous number of times and didn't come away with half as many points as we should have done.
And most of our good play was in the first half, wasn't it? Whereas you say there were a couple of really great tries and quite a few pushover tries, which is not to be decried, because we've scored more pushover tries than anybody else in the league, apparently, which shows that that's an area where we were really deficient leading up to this season, and it's really been rectified both there and in the scrum, Matt.
You can take it one of two ways, can't you? Scoring as many maul tries as you do. Exeter were absolutely decried for it at one point because that was all they did. They scored maul tries, they scored scrum tries, and that was it, but it was enough to win games. It's been a get-out-of-jail card for us over the course of the season. Very happy that we have done it, but you'd like to be the scorer of the most mauls as well as scoring a lot of other tries as well, wouldn't you? You want your attack to come from more than one angle. We are reverting a little bit to type in that it's win penalty, kick to corner, push over and score. And as we'll probably get onto with one of the 3-word reviews, we haven't got someone who is as adept at scoring the extra 2 points from the corner of the pitch.
Saracen Supporters Association are saying playoff hopes dashed. They are. In a way, I'm sort of relieved. I'm relieved for a couple of reasons. I'm relieved that I won't have to buy 2 tickets at Bath for 110 quid each, which is what it costs to go down there, plus a hotel room. It's going to save me an awful lot of money. But in any case, based on Saturday, were we to play the real Bath team, I don't think there'd be much prospect of winning. What do you reckon, Barry?
I think you're right. We would definitely have been going in as underdogs. Having said that, of course, it was a similar process last season when we had a slightly cheaper and shorter journey up to Northampton. Although we came reasonably close to at least being competitive in that game, we were hanging on a little bit for long periods. And I think Bath at home are going to be unstoppable on Friday.
Good point about Northampton. Fair play to them for being, I think it was £45 I paid last year, and being geographically located an hour's drive from Mill Hill, which is very good. Much better than Bath in both price and location, although it is a very pretty city. Tim Bonnet, Goode by playoffs. Very clever, Tim. But you should be our title writer for the Fezcast. Rugby Saracens. Yeah, here we go. Inconsistent season encapsulated. I think that's what we were talking about earlier, Matt.
The whole season has been typified by you don't know which performance is going to turn up match to match, and you don't know which performance is going to turn up quarter to quarter. We've had first 20 minutes of games be dreadful. We've had last 20 minutes of games be dreadful. And yeah, it looks from what I've seen that, again, this weekend, it just didn't click for long enough, and it was all in fits and starts. So it's something that's been difficult to put a finger on all year. I think it is, various people have had various strong words to say about things like the amount of box kicking that we do. We've just talked about the amount of ball tries, our blunt attack. But it's been a slightly different problem, I think, across the season at different times. So very, very tricky to pinpoint and to work on for next season. But obviously we are seeing that for however it came about, the likes of Kevin Sorrell were moving on. Things are going to change within the coaching, within the style. And we'll just have to see what happens next season. It's been inconsistent, but we did finish one match away from playing knockout rugby at the end of the season still. So, it could be worse.
That is a very fair point. 2 editions ago, I think it was after the Northampton game, we called the game The Season in a Microcosm. So goodness knows what we're going to call this one, because maybe we should call it May in a Microcosm, because the similarities in the games were very clear, especially in the last 20 minutes. Last week, I enjoyed your discussion about the changes in the squad and felt actually quite hopeful, because it was mainly Max Malins for Alex Goode, wasn't it? And then a couple of more than a couple. One top flight prop coming in from Exeter. I forget his name, but he certainly looks like he's actually had a good season in an underperforming team. And then 2 very useful, in their different ways, sort of third ranking props, if you like, in that one's a 24-year-old and one's a real gnarly old pro from Pro D2, but nevertheless, hopefully is going to do a job. And overall, with the young players having another year under their belt, being more mature, it really looks like it's going to be a stronger squad next season than it is this season. Hopefully there will be changes to the coaching over the summer, and some of those attacking deficiencies will start to be solved.
I think it's more a case that we need to change our approach than change our personnel. I mean, obviously, all the front row, we've had some terrible luck in the front row with injuries and the way our recruitment's worked. But it's been very hit and miss players coming in and just not seeming to either kick on from where they were for their previous club or not be as solid as we'd hoped. And yeah, hopefully next season it goes right. But yeah, you look through our squad and on paper, you look at the names and go, that's really very strong, but just something isn't working right.
Going away slightly from the squad for next season, I had an interesting thought today that if we swapped our results around this season, so if instead of losing at Newcastle, we'd lost at Leicester, And instead of losing one of the Quins games, we'd lost, say, at Bristol, which was an incredibly tight game that could have gone either way. And we won the other two games. We'd beaten Quins and we'd beaten Newcastle away. We would probably have a slightly different slant on it. We'd have ended up the same number of points in the same position, but we might have had a slightly different outlook on it. I think it was just disappointing that we left points out on the pitch against the sides that finished 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, losing away to Newcastle was just... up until then, I think the season was going quite well, wasn't it? As you say, we'd had good results at Bristol and what have you. And that was the first indication that the wheels were going to come off, at least for a while. And they did. I mean, away at Newcastle, the wheels came off big time. I don't think it's arrogant to say that we should have lost that game. We definitely shouldn't, as shown by when Newcastle came to the Stonex. So it was an indication that something was fundamentally wrong that would not really put right the whole season.
The points that we'd sort of dropped up until that point, I mean, there were mitigating circumstances in a way for all of them. There were, yes, it's our own doing, but there were red cards in some of them where you go, well, we probably are going to lose that match. We had a period where a lot of key personnel were injured or otherwise unavailable. And we were always able to go, not great, but here are some reasons why we're not feeling quite so bad about losing a match. But yeah, like you said, once we got to the Newcastle game, there really was just nowhere to hide. And everyone that's been telling us off all season for trying to find the positive side, we finally had their way and we didn't have much good we could say about it. But it's kind of continued from there, isn't it? It's just never quite got going from that point. I don't know. I'd have to look back. Have we won more than 2 games on the spit since that Newcastle match?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I don't know whether we have. One recruitment who I think has been an unmitigated success has been Rhys Carey. And he was responsible for one of the moments of high comedy on Saturday. I don't know whether you saw it, Barry, when, was it Tobias Elliott made a fantastic break, really got through the players, had one player in front of him, passed to the player in support who just had a really easy run-in, and it was Rhys Carey.
I'm not sure I'd call it an easy run-in. He was a long way out at that point.
Had it been Roti, it would have been a different matter altogether.
It was a brilliant support line. It was a great pass and a great putting the player into space. But you could see the look of panic on Rhys's face as he went, "Where the hell's my support?"
I mean, he did really well, in his own inimitable style. He took a lot of bringing down, but somebody with even just 1 mile an hour more speed would have scored a try with that. It was great to watch, though. Oh, Steve T. Now, this is, well, it's a legitimate point to make. I don't know if it's right. Subs cause problems.
It does seem to be that we lose momentum around the 55, 60-minute mark when we look to make what always strike me as slightly preconceived substitutions. There's always this thing about your starting front row does an hour and then you bring on the rest of them for the last 20 minutes. But it does always seem to take it out of us again. And I think when we get a couple more comments down, that'll be summing it up. Rue Cayford's no intensity again. I wonder if it's not the subs, but we just lose the intensity with all the changes.
At Northampton, it happened once we'd scored our bonus point try. I mean, you'd sort of be saying that these last 20-minute drop-offs are due to who? Theo Dan, Charlie Bracken, Hugh Tizard? Are they really causing that much of a problem? I don't think so. My impression has been that it's a sort of whole team dropping off the game.
Yeah, I struggle with this sort of thing because you've got a lot of people who would like us to be playing our young players more, breaking through some of the older players that we've got in the squad. Not that there are going to be many of them left next season. But in order to do that, you have them on the bench and you bring them on with enough time to play. And they need that 20 minutes, half an hour. Barry mentioned Charlie Bracken. He has come off the bench in the majority of games this season, but he's only had that 5 or 10 minutes. But if we're also going to say that our intensity drops off when we start shipping points when those players come on, what are the coaching team really supposed to do in this situation? I don't really know. But you're right, it is something that has happened. And yeah, don't know what the answer is. Equally, certainly with the front row, sometimes we've brought a new front row on and our problem has been solved. So I don't think it's a universal issue, but it is something that just happens in the game of rugby at that time. Both teams are making changes and the momentum will shift either way. It just is what it is.
Saracens teams of the past just never knew when they were beaten, did they? Let alone when they're winning. It was just something that we're not used to seeing. Louis Johnson alluded to it, that when something's not quite clicking, it's hard to be mentally on it all the time. I mean, there was a couple of things. Nick Tompkins, who actually had a really good game, I thought, but in that period, once we were into that downward slide, there he was making a pass directly to a Bath player who had a run-in. So mentally, perhaps not quite there doing it. Ivan Van Zyl, again, had actually one of his better games, but there was one particular instance where a lot easier for me to see than it was for him. I'm sitting up in the stands and can see that he's got two players outside him, one Bath defender, and he kicked it, a box kick. Although he didn't do it so much this game. He was trying to play it out wide and get the runners in, but just a tendency to do that box kicking. Again, is that just because it's hard in the spur of the moment with no time, or was it an indication of a little bit of mental fatigue?
I don't know. It's difficult to know, really. I do wonder if we're playing to a set of instructions that say, if you are in this position on the field, you have 2 rucks and then you box kick. If you're in this position in the field, you can have a few more before you even try to think about kicking the ball away. I mean, there was one on Saturday when we box kicked, and it wasn't for territory, it wasn't for possession, it was literally just wellying the ball back to Bath. Seemed daft to me.
Rue Cavard, no intensity again. I don't think that's fair of the whole match. It's a bit like against Northampton. Right up until we scored our 4th try, our intensity was right on it. And defensively as well. I don't think in the game on Saturday we didn't show intensity defensively. I think we very much did. Sounding like a stuck record, for me, the problems are more in attack than in defensive intensity.
I think there's probably, this should not be an excuse at all, but at half-time, looking at the scores around, they'd have been pretty certain that there wasn't much left riding on that half of rugby going into the second half. And I can forgive plenty of those guys after a long season for not wanting to get injured in the last half of rugby that they're going to be playing and maybe just take 10% out of their game. Yes, we want our boys to be giving it 100% all the time, but you've got to be realistic that they would have taken their foot off a little bit towards the end of that for certain.
That's a very good point. It actually looked quite good at one point. I think even Exeter were giving Sale a run for their money. But yeah, by the time it came to the second half, they were probably half on the beach by the time that game ended. And I think that's, as you say, understandable. Grubber-Rucky, very nearly embarrassing. I think we've covered that one, which doesn't mean that Grubber's not absolutely right. It did feel that way. All hail the ale. Well, I can't argue with your title, All Hail the Ale. And his handle is at All Hail the Ale 1. So presumably there are more All Hail the Ales, but should have done better.
I wonder if that comedian's got it.
Paolo Frutini, the season encapsulated. Yep, very much so, as some of us are saying. Here we go. This is the one you were alluding to, Matt. Josh, Burke can't convert.
Not true. But he has had games this season where it really has looked a struggle. He has been kicking it about 70% this year, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He also hasn't been kicking all season because Alex Lazowski has been doing it. Obviously, in this last match, he missed 3 out of 6.
Yeah. All
All of them, I believe, from the touchline.
Yeah.
It's where we've been scoring a lot of our tries. I'm not saying that Owen Farrell had it easy, but Max Malins and Alex Lewington were masters of finishing and just getting a few extra metres in field when they scored their tries. I wish there was a way of doing statistics where it takes into account how easy a kick is. Because, yeah, if you're a kicker where your team's scoring in front of the post all the time, your stats look pretty good, don't they? But towards the start of the season, had that period of a few weeks where at the Stonex it was basically blowing a tornado and kicking was an impossibility almost. But he's had games, he was 100% in the game against Toulon. He was near as damn it 100% in a few other games around that time as well. It averages out to about 70. It's been an up and down season for him. I think to say that he can't convert is rubbish, but there have been difficulties. So it is definitely something that needs looking at and needs working on. And if we're going to continue to score tries from mauls all the time, then it's kicking from the touchline that needs to be worked on. But he's got a better kicking percentage than Alex Ozowski this year.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he was good. I will say that. But yeah, possibly a bit unfair.
And the interesting thing will be when Louis Johnson gets a crack at it, because against Newcastle, he really looked like Dead-Eye Dick. He had some kicks way out on the edge, and they were going like rockets through the post. So we'll be able to compare and contrast in the future. Fine Wines mirrored the season. Yep. Steve Owen, poor season over. So Steve is obviously a half glass empty man. I feel it's more up and down season over.
I know we've acquired the same number of points as we did last season. I guess the argument is in sport, if you stand still, you're going to get overtaken.
Phil Evans here. He sort of worked his way up to the 3-word review. He's given us a review and then realised he wasn't using enough words, because his first review is poor. His second review is very poor. And then he's finally got there. He's got the hang of the game, but very, very poor. So I think we know what Phil's on about. Rugger Sid, second half amateurs. We do have a problem with falling away in May, it appears. And so we come to the rose-tinted spectacle crowd. Ron Peck, we go again. Well, that's the great thing about sport, isn't it? There's always another season.
Yep. Good luck trying to work out when it starts, because Premiership Rugby haven't decided to tell us yet, but I'm sure it will start at some point in the autumn.
They don't normally announce the fixtures until the end of July, do they?
It's not the fixtures. I was just looking for the date.
Oh, really?
It seems to be a classified secret. I'm not too sure what the reason behind that one is.
I don't know whether it's anything to do with the athletics season, but we tend to have our first home game quite late in September.
I think last season it started the weekend of the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of September.
Phil Stevenson, free beer was nice. There he was. He was disagreeing with you, Barry, and agreeing with me. I thought the free beer was nice. I wasn't being a curmudgeon complaining about free beer.
He's obviously still drinking it, though, because that was 4 words.
Hey, free beer nice.
Free beer nice, 3.
Oh, you added a was in there. You were adding grammar. Sorry, Duncan.
I'm adding a new string to my bow. Decided to not just get people's names wrong, but misquote them as well. Ben, how do you pronounce that? Huxma. Give McCall time. Give McCall time. Yeah, I think we will do that. I think he's earned that.
I think we can give him time on the basis that he's had 10 years of pretty good times. He can have one. He can have one bad season.
I do think Matt was right, though. If we don't start next season well, I think there will be increasing pressure. I mean, there have been some outlying calls for bigger and better changes, and I think those calls will get louder if we don't start next season in good form.
As I'm in charge here and leading the conversation, I'm going to do a jazz and talk about something completely unrelated to Saracens, although it won't be about my history. It's just about Nottingham Forest. When they created the Premier League record of winning 35 matches straight in a row, they were then at home for the 36th lost and were booed off. So I think we could pass on booing Mark McCall and give him a bit of time.
Sports fans are a fickle bunch, aren't we?
They are, aren't they? Stephen Hatfield, time to rebuild. Steve, I think we're sort of halfway through that process, aren't we? It's not a process that's about to start. It's a process in train. Yeah, we'll have to see some results of it, but I think we have started that. Adam, consistency is key. Yeah, we could do with some more consistency. And then Mark Todd repeating something we've heard about just now, always next season. I don't know about you, so I'm already looking forward to next season. I'm looking forward with a lot of hope.
You have to, didn't you? I mean, I go back to the consistency is key comment, really. I mean, you look at the league table, and there's only been one consistent team this season. And well, actually, no, there's been 3 consistent teams, because 2 of them have been consistently rubbish. You string a couple more wins together, you get a home semi-final, and you never know in the final, do you? So I think we're finding in English rugby at the moment, you can be fairly successful, actually, while still being fairly inconsistent. But it's just not what we're used to, is it? We're used to winning at least 3/4 of our matches in the season and finishing inside the top 2. Last couple of years, it hasn't happened.
That's right.
I don't want to get used to it, but
that's where we are at the moment.
No, we're not at all entitled, are we?
No, not at all.
You know, we
No.
Actually, I mean, I think it was always going to happen, and it has been one of the beauties of concentrating your talent into fewer teams. I'm not saying this is a perfect system by any means, and also having a relatively low salary cap, that you will get the season like we've just had, where at times it seems that everybody can beat everybody else. Going to be interesting next season. I think we're going to see it spread out even more because the salary cap goes up by $1.5 million, doesn't it? Which is, a fair number of players. Not all teams will actually spend up to the cap because they won't be able to afford to. So, and I have to say, based on Saturday, Bath have got very, very good academy stroke reserve teams. So there's every indication that they're going to be as strong next season as this.
They've done some decent recruitment as well for next season. So whatever happens to them for the rest of this season, they will be up there again and challenging, I'm sure, next year. And let's just hope we can be up there with them.
Yeah, I don't think they're like Northampton, are they? They've got a relatively large number of real pillars of their team leaving at the end of this season. They've actually got quite not a revolution in place. They've got a steady transition going on. Very interesting at the end when a very useful looking winger came on, and just looking at him before he'd even done anything, you're sort of thinking, he looks handy. Just the look of him. He looked big and strong and what have you. And I didn't catch at the game, which I think you did, Barry, that he's Martin O'Fire's son.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for those who don't know, Martin O'Fire is one of the most legendary wingers there's ever been in rugby league. He was a total try monster when he played for Wigan. And if Martin O'Fire's son had come on at Wigan for his first game, it would be a bit like for us, a young 18-year-old chunk of granite coming on to play number 12 and be called Barrett. It would be that kind of legendary status, so he'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Shall we take a break there, and we'll come back and just discuss a few odds and sods for this edition.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome back, everybody. If I may, I'd like to, without spending too much time on it, go over something that Jez and Matt went over very well last week. But with Mark McCall during the week having tried to say that all the Owen Farrell rumours were really just talk, it's quite clear now that they're very much more than talk. There are negotiations going on to see whether Owen Farrell can come back. The interview that he gave after the match, there was kind of weird logic that he gave, which I think, again, was trying to dampen this story down without, for want of a better word, lying by saying that there's nothing going on. He said that if Owen Farrell came back, it would be as a injury dispensation cover for Alex Lazowski. Now, I don't know whether that rings true for you, Matt.
I'm not entirely sure whether that quite fits within the injury dispensation rules, to be honest, because they're supposed to be relatively like for like and on a lower salary, which is fair enough. On the subject of all the talks, I mean, of course, we're talking about Owen Farrell coming back, but we'll be talking to about 20 other players that don't hit the headlines either.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that it's Owen Farrell. And to be honest, this is part of the reason why I was a little bit reluctant to say it would be a good idea, because I just, the whole circus that we're having now and that we will get if Owen Farrell comes back is just, I think it's going to be a bit disruptive either way, really.
I'm very much more positive about the idea, I have to say. I mean, he's not the answer to a maiden's prayer, but, just going over the deficiencies that we were perceiving earlier, he would, I believe, make a good attack coach. He's a student of the game. He studies teams and he's inventive, I believe, and we'll sort that out. He would be a brilliant mentor to Fergus Burke and Louis Johnson. Louis Johnson has said that as a boy, Owen Farrell was his idol. He was the reason why he started playing number 10. So although he'd perhaps have to have a little bit more patience, the idea of being mentored by Owen Farrell, I think, would be very attractive to him. And I think it would be for Fergus Burke. I mean, we saw another performance on Saturday, which was the kind of inexperienced mixed bag that we're very much useful. The try he scored was wonderful. Using his speed, getting through, and then a little bit of Maradona-type dribbling, and then over he goes for a great try. And there were other great runs like that, but he's not the finished article. To have Owen Farrell there mentoring him, I think would be brilliant for him. And then in terms of those second-half drop-offs, now you could point to perhaps our final game against Sale last season, where he didn't seem to be able to lift the team there, but in terms of that mental attitude, I feel that you probably can't get a better coach, player coach, call him whatever you like, to try and address that.
You won't get a better mentor for any rugby player anywhere than Owen, and you won't find a more driven individual when it comes to demanding standards of those around him than Owen. That is without a doubt. We don't want to be bringing him back as a starting 10. Is my only fear is that we put all our eggs in a Farrell-shaped basket for the past 3 seasons, I guess, and we're paying a little bit of a penalty for that now, I think, when he decided to have a crack at France. But it's a great shame for him personally that it doesn't look to be working out. I mean, there's multiple reasons for that, but you've got to welcome him back on the coaching front at least, I think.
I think that's right. We did put our eggs in one basket and we were caught short in the succession. But in terms of what he would be if he comes back, the Owen Farrell has been a failure in France story is very much overplayed. I think I shared that stat with you that Racing have won 17% of the games that they've played without him, and they've won 65% of the games they played with him.
Yeah.
But once again, he's had a very injury-hit season. And his last season for us was very injury-hit. And at 33, with what he's put his body through defensively over the years, it's not particularly surprising, is it, that now he's starting to get injured quite a lot. So I think he wouldn't be coming back with us putting all of our eggs in one basket. He'd be coming back in that kind of Charlie Hodgson in his last 2 years role, with the young Owen Farrell coming on, usually, well, either starting and then Charlie would finish, or vice versa. That would be the role that Owen would come back to, I think. And if I'm right, that he's maybe feeling that his body's not up to another full top 14 season, as a transition into coaching, which is surely where he's going to go, I kind of feel it actually be a great opportunity for him to come back and do that.
Am I right in saying he's been playing 12 for Racing most of the season?
Well, they've got another, I forget his name, but they've got another very good fly half who I think is also English. So I think he's been doing a bit of that job that he did with George Ford, and he has played 10, but he's also played 12.
Welcome him back as a coach. If he's going to be a player coach, that's going to be another challenge for him as well, because I don't think that's a particularly easy role for anyone to take on. But if anyone has got the sheer bloody mindedness to do it, it's going to be Owen, isn't it?
But there's been a few players, and we've spoken to them, have said that he has been the coach on the pitch. Mm. And Jez last week was saying, he has been Mark McCall's right-hand man.
Yes, I just think it slightly flies in the face of the whole we're evolving younger squad, bringing players through. If we need to have a 33-year-old Owen Farrell on one leg playing at 12 to make us play well, then it's a bit of a short-term band-aid. I'm all for Owen Farrell coming in as a coach, 100%. I think it's going to be fantastic. I just think it potentially casts a bit of a shadow. But I was the person that said Maro Itoje wouldn't be a very good captain this season. So hopefully I'm wrong again if Owen does come in.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. As I say, I sort of feel that sort of Charlie Hodgson type role, mentoring while playing a bit before you retire, is actually something that would aid our transition. I asked one of the coaches at the Open day that we seem to have a lot of young back three players coming through, whether wing, fullback or whatever. And then we've recruited Max Malins. And his point was, yeah, but for those young players, having a Max Malins is very good for the mentorship and will make them develop quicker.
Just one thing to add to that, actually. I thought I'd read this somewhere, so I've just very quickly checked it before I say it. Apparently, Owen and Louis Johnson have a very strong relationship already, and they talk at least every month. So Owen's already mentoring Louis through, despite not even being in the same country as him at the moment.
Well, there you go. I am usually right. No, I mean, Louis did say it himself. He said that Owen is his absolute idol. He's the sportsman that he most admires in the world. And I'm not surprised that he's trying to pick up tips from him, even if it's by telephone over in France.
Yeah.
There was a video during the week of a Tiki Tonga that had all of the departees in there, plus the 100 cappers. And in that video was Kaden Pearce-Paul. It's a bit of a shame that there's been no announcement about that, but I assume that, like Josh Hallett, he was in that video because he's leaving. And I'd been a player who, at Ampthill and in the Prem Cup, I've always looked forward to seeing. He in particular, he was a nuisance in the line-out. So I very much hope that, like some other players, he's going to stay in rugby, but he might be like Josh Hallett, who apparently has a very good job offer, having finished a degree course at university. Is he a player that's ever caught your eye, Matt?
He is, yeah. I think he's had a few injuries and his options have been a bit limited over the last few years. You know, he's come into he's part of the senior team, not part of the academy, barely making an appearance at senior level, to be honest. But he is, you know, he's 22, which doesn't mean he's old at all, does it? But I think he's just potentially a bit of a victim of what's coming through behind him. I mean, you look at the likes of Sadiqa coming through, who I don't think he's yet turned 20. There's a lot being said of some of the under-18s coming in. I think Barry Wright at the start of the season name-checked Teo, I can't say it, Adegbemile, whatever. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, him.
Again, 18-year-old coming through. So maybe Kaden Pearce-Paul was someone who's 4 years more senior than that. He's got the likes of Mara Itoje, Nick Ezekwe, Hugh Tizard, all ahead of him at senior level, younger players coming through behind him that have perhaps overtaken him already, and there's just not room for him in the squad. So yeah, hopefully he's found something. He's obviously someone that can play very well at championship level that we've seen already, and you never know where he might turn up.
It's a vicious old world, isn't it, professional sport? It must be the nastiest part of Mark McCall's job is this part of the season when you're either probably dealing with agents who are being a little bit greedy about the ones you want to keep and then having to essentially sack some people that you probably really like and are really nice blokes. But yeah, best of luck to him if he is moving on. Been no announcement, and I hope he does find a good club to go to. Last, I thought we touch on something that's missed the Fezcast a bit and we haven't talked much about is this idea of a World Club Championship. If I understand it correctly, there will be the normal Champions Cup knockout rounds, and then is it the top 8 from Europe will go into something like a 16-team competition, wherever it is? What do you think to this, Barry?
I'm going to say this slightly tongue-in-cheek, but if the RFU have got anything to do with it, there'll be one game in November, and then they'll all come back again and play a couple of games in the Premiership Rugby Cup, and then they'll go back out for the Six Nations, and then they'll go back to the and good luck trying to keep tabs on it. It's an interesting idea. I'm not sure it's really a substitute for a strong Premiership, and of course it's another thing for Leinster not to win, so there is something good about it.
I have very mixed feelings about it. What about you, Matt?
I don't like it. They're basically, the way it sounds like they're doing it is that they're playing the group stage of the Champions Cup, which yes has its faults, but then they're just cutting the tournament off at that point and starting a new one. I don't really understand that. I mean, you imagine, let's go to football. You play Champions League football, sort of get into where you get the knockout stages and you might get some really huge matchups. And you go, well, by the way, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to bring the best team out of Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and we're going to play against them somewhere random instead. And we're not going to have a Champions League winner.
Or you're going to sort of downgrade what's left and actually not have the best 8 teams, but the next will go into the quarterfinals and what have you.
I get why they're having to do that if they want this tournament, because there just isn't room in the calendar for more rugby. We've spent a long, long time on this show seriously concerned about player welfare. So I'm glad they're at least looking at something different rather than just slamming more matches into the rugby calendar. But I don't think it works. Why don't we just have a one-off fixture between the winners of Super Rugby and the winners of the Champions Cup for a bit of prestige as the best club in the world? I think they did it once as an exhibition match and then it died. Surely that would be better.
It's what they do in football and in rugby league. And there's another big problem is that with the England rules for England qualified players, you're going to have the same problem that you're going to have every year in the Champions Cup, which we faced this season, in that you have to choose whether you're prioritising the league or Europe, because there's one game when you might be up against Toulon or Toulouse or Bordeaux, and you've got to decide, are we actually going to send out a reserve bench or are we going to actually have our full squad and have to send out a reserve bench in the league? So that's a problem that it's going to face, because presumably it's going to take place after the Six Nations if the European qualifiers are going to be before the Six Nations. On the one hand, I feel that you do have to try new things to keep things fresh, but I sort of feel it misses what you need in club rugby, in league club rugby, which is consistency year on year. People like to know what things are, and this idea of having a different competition every 4 years, I'm not sure that really works. And if they end up playing the matches even in Dubai, let alone Australia and New Zealand, one of the great things about the European competition is that for many of us, it gives a really good trip. It's something that you look forward to, seeing, where are we going to end up, where are we going to go? And for most people, as we saw in South Africa, it doesn't really work for the travelling fan. It seems to be the way of these governing bodies that they like to create these. They like to create things that make themselves more important. So, okay, we'll end with that little moan. And it's a thumbs down from all three of us, but we won't prejudge it. We'll see whether it could be the most astounding success we've ever seen. So thanks very much for listening in, everybody, and thanks to Barry and Matt. Next week, we'll have an end-of-season roundup. No doubt we'll be voting for players of the season, young players of the season, breakthrough players of the season. So if you want to give us any hints on that, you can get in touch with us either via the Facebook page or the Twitter handle, and we'll very much take into account, have a look at your suggestions and ignore them. So until next week, have a good week.
Cheers all.
This is the Fezcast.